The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Ball DFS Today podcast. Today is Thursday, September 12th. I am Joe Sarvati, affectionately known as Coach, and I am joined as usual by my partner in crime here, one of the more respected NBA DFS players in the industry, Mr. Mike Apotria. Mike, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Coach. I'm fantastic. We're on episode 3 now. We went through our top 10 moves in the offseason. Now we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of what we're really going to do to help our listeners actually win some money. We're going to talk some strategy. We're going to talk some teams. We're going to talk some players. We have a night in store for us. It's going to be a fun one.
It is definitely going to be fun, and it's awesome to have some shows prior to the season like this to get prepared, get that edge. And, I was talking to Dan Vespris a little bit on NBA Today earlier today, and we said our goal is to get all of our listeners a nice little bankroll to play with early on, so you got a little cushion. So that's the goal.
Oh, I built my cushion actually last week on Fantasy Draft. Shout out to them. I mean, if you haven't been taking advantage of their rake-free contests over there, you're making a mistake. It's plain and simple. I mean, if you're new to DFS, the rake is one of the most important things I factor into, what contests I'm entering. It's just, when you're dealing with some of these contests that have these massive rakes, it's just giving money away. And the rake free means more paid out spots, bigger prize pools. And I just did a little $20. I put it in their Hooters Millie Maker over there. I participated. I put a $20 entry, and it turned into $180 for me last week. So I'm just I'm getting a little bit of my little football action, building my bankroll for basketball, so I can turn it into some real bucks. But it's always fun when you get to see a little profit.
Fantastic, and our show is presented by Fantasy Draft, so an absolute great lead-in for them. But yes, we want to thank them for their sponsorship. They are the only DFS site that is rake-free. And there's the promotion, which is terrific for our Hoop Ball listeners. If you go to fantasydraft.com and put in the promo code HoopBall, all one word now, HOOPBALL. We removed the dash because it was messing things up last week. So we want to keep it as simple as possible. So if you put in the promo HoopBall, you get one free week of rake-free action, 7 days, $1,000 worth of tournaments can be entered, and then you go from there. And then they also they had so much success this past Sunday, so this Sunday they're going to run another Hooters $1 million football contest. So it looks like you're going to be making a little bit more money there, Michael.
I got a little bit of bankroll to play with, so I'll probably shoot in 2 or 3 entries this week, and we'll touch on it. It doesn't matter if it's free money, if it's profitable money. You still got to manage that bankroll. We'll get there eventually, but I'm not going to go and blast $180 worth of lineups now that just won 180. So I'm still going to have to manage my bankroll a little bit, but I'll definitely put in a few extra. I mean, I love football. I'm a big football guy too, Coach. You might know that about me already, but basketball is my wheelhouse, so I really focus on that NBA season, and that's when I really, really gauge into this. So football, I'm just trying to keep myself busy on these Sundays.
Well, that's good, man. Enjoy it. I am a monster fish in football, so I don't even try to pretend like I belong in that. I did try to swim in that water a little bit on Sunday, and again, I was a guppy at the bottom of the ocean there, but I'm just getting ready to make all my cash in the NBA, brother. That's my game plan. So, but for the rest of everybody else, I know, NFL's huge. Jump on Fantasy Draft and show them support. We really appreciate them allowing us to bring all this free content to our listeners. So awesome. So the game plan today is, we want to talk a little overall strategy of DFS, because what we found is through a lot of questions that have come in through Twitter and through the hoop-ball.com forums is we have some new players to DFS that are just trying to figure out exactly how they want to position things for the upcoming NBA season. We have some players that have dabbled in it, had some success, but not consistent success. And then we've also gotten some responses from some, so, if you would want to call them sharks, sort of like you, Apatria, out there that are looking for a couple of edges that other people aren't bringing out there. And again, our differentiator, as we've said from the beginning, is looking at all of the different angles and discussing the game within the game from all the different strategy standpoints. So let's start by talking about really the two different directions in DFS that you can go. And the good part about this is I specialize really on one side of that, and Michael does on the other. So you'll get two real fresh, real comparisons to how you can play DFS. Now, in the DFS basketball world, my game is the cash games, when you're playing head-to-head or multiples, where you're looking to put in one winning lineup, or single entry, which is the same thing where everybody can only put in one entry, because I'm looking to strategize and build out one lineup that's going to bring me home the money. So I'm playing a little higher stakes head-to-heads and those that are going to profit me in that direction. So I'll get into that briefly here in a second, but Michael, why don't you tell them a little bit more of your side of it with the GPP play? I know you've had some great success there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big GPP guy. I mean, I do play a little cash game here and there. I will play single entry tournaments. I'm not limited myself to just GPPs. But yeah, no, I mean, let's be real. When I first started doing this about 4 years ago, I wanted a shot at, $50K, $100K. I wanted to go for one of those big wins just like everybody else. And you learn a few things along the way. And we're going to touch on a few of those things. But, I mean, I think I want to say I mastered my craft. I'm by far not an expert when it comes to winning every single night. It's part of GPPs. You're going to have some losing nights. You're going to have some winning nights. But I've remained profitable. I've done pretty well in doing this. And I just want to give everybody the knowledge and save you guys the time of about the year and a half of painstaking dollars lost I've made, and really make you guys profitable. And it's like you said, there's multiple games, and you have to approach them with a different strategy. There's no way you can take a cash game 50-50 lineup and plug that into 20 different GPPs. It's just not profitable doing that. So we're gonna touch on all grounds: the cash game, the 50-50s, the single entry games, and your massive GPPs as well. But there's a lot to talk about, and I think cash game is probably the best way to start this, because at the end of the day, that's how you build your bankroll, right, Coach?
Absolutely. I mean, it's to me, it's definitely tempting, and I do dabble with the GPPs. Everybody wants to, get the big hit or the big win, and at times when I built a decent bankroll, I will, dabble in that. But if you're really going to build yourself a bankroll that's sustainable, to me, you use all the different strategies at hand, which we could talk about a few of those there, to really build one specific lineup. Or, if you're torn on one or two players, you can have two or three lineups where you're just taking one guy out for another at a similar price. Or sometimes I'll have a little bit more costly guy and a cheaper guy and flip-flop too. But that's generally the most that I'll do. And the reason I do that is, all the research, watching the games, first of all, that's, I would recommend the first thing to do is to get the ticket and check out as many games as you can, because there's nothing, a trained basketball eye and watching the game, seeing the flow, just seeing, all of those bits and pieces of coaches' interactions, just the way teams are playing together, the rhythm, the rotation of players. You can make a lot of determinations that way that prior to even starting to build that lineup. So, the process of putting that daily fantasy lineup together, and I think that's what a lot of the hoop ballers that have the year-long seasons, it's 100% completely different strategy. You're looking at that game. Yesterday doesn't matter. Tomorrow doesn't matter. It's that 48-minute game and what lineup you're going to build that evening is going to give you the winning lineup. So get the ticket, watch all those little edges so you can have some eyes on some guys that you want to target. In fact, today we're going to, as we're going through these strategies, we're going to each put in 2 teams that we're targeting early, if you will, and 2 teams that we're fading early. And we'll give you some reasons behind that. And that's just in a generic way because, again, you're looking at that specific game, that specific matchup. But what I do when I start building my teams, again, keeping all of that knowledge in mind, which, yes, you can get on there, listen to some of the touts, pay for some of the sites to get their picks. You got to remember when you're dealing with all of that stuff, a big part of the pool of people that are playing are looking at the same information. And that's going to affect a big thing that's even probably bigger on the GPP side, but also a big play in cash games, which is ownership. That's a big part of it that should sway your decision, especially if you're close between a few players. I mean, do you want to pivot to somebody that's 20% owned in a late game as opposed to somebody that's 60% owned? That pivot can give you that one advantageous piece that's going to help you win that game. So you want to have all the knowledge coming in, so you have some predisposed things in your mind of teams that are hot, all of those different aspects that only you're going to get to know by really digging in and focusing. And preparation is a huge part of this. Then you want to crunch some stats, pull all the numbers. There's all kinds of information out there that's just incredible. Just NBA.com alone, you can pull every single category that you want to start diving into, not just pace of play and all of those pieces, but there's defense against particular positions. Teams struggle defending centers, and they have all of those ranked 1 to 30, all of the percentages in there. So as the season develops and you get a little bit more of a sample size, you can really start utilizing those. What we're discussing in these next few shows we're trying to jumpstart that and look into those and get you those winners and ideas of players and teams to target so that you can beat everybody to the punch on that. Plus, what you'll see on a lot of the pricing of the players on the sites is going to be based on that as well. If you have 2, high-paced teams playing each other, they're going to be puffed up in pricing, whereas it may just, not be the real thing. You got to dig down a couple of more levels there to look at it. So you want to do your research, pull your numbers, have your predisposed thoughts of the games, and then you want to look at, obviously there's some fantastic sites out there right now that are showing back-to-backs, travel time. It's just some really cool stuff. I'll give you one right now. It's called positiveresidual.com, and it takes every single team in the league. Free plug for those guys. You have to contact them because they're awesome. And if you go on there, it shows every game, it shows every road team and all the travel, how many rest days, when their back-to-back games are. Just a really nice tool that you also can factor in, because that makes a big difference in the NBA, as we know, especially with the load management piece coming in. So I'm going to turn it over to you in GPPs. One more point I want to make, though, on this. So you have the preparations you do, you get to the websites you feel comfortable with, pulling your stats. Sure, pull a little information from some of the touts out there, but don't overweigh that, and then start building your lineup based on where those factors fit in to what the pricing of the players are. And that's, in the NBA, it's a lot different than football, baseball, where you're building a lot more guys out. You have one or two guys that smash the slate that you build into your lineup. You're going to be golden, especially the way I play, where I don't have to beat 25,000 other people. I'm trying to beat one guy head to head, or a small group where 50-50, where I'm trying to double up my money and build my bankroll.
Absolutely. And I mean, you hit on it before. Ownership percentage is probably one of the biggest factors that separates these two things, where in a cash game, I'm not worried about necessarily playing a guy that's going to be 60, 70% owned, because odds are if he's 60 to 70% owned, he's going to be in a very good spot. He's in line to either smash, he's got a good matchup, great pace of play, maybe somebody's hurt and he's filling in for them, whatever the case may be. And like you said, you're not trying to be that top 5 finish. You just want to finish in a 50-50 in the top half of the pool. So you're not going to finish in the top half of the pool if you're missing out on a guy who's $4,000 or $5,000 and scores 35 points. In a GPP, you might take another avenue and try to find a guy that is similarly priced at a much lower ownership, who has a similar upside, but there's variance involved with it. Maybe the guy that was 70% owned has a 48% chance of scoring at least 35 DraftKings points or FanDuel points, whatever site you're playing on, and the guy I'm choosing in my GPP might have a 15% chance to do so, but that's why he's so much lower owned. And that's my number one reason. I still like to play those cash games, because that's how I monitor my bankroll. That's how I keep my bankroll steady to afford myself to play in these GPPs that I always enter. And the biggest thing I like to stress is if you don't have that bankroll, if you are entering these 150 lineup or contest entry lineups, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because there's going to be nerds out there like me, like other guys, like other sharks, who are rolling out 20 lineups, maxing out the 20 entry max, or maxing out the 100 entry max. And when you're making a 20 or 100 lineups, I'll take the craziest shots on guys, because I know I got 18 other lineups or 19 other lineups out there that I could depend on. When you're only making one, it becomes a lot harder to take one of those chances when you could just easily double your money. And the fact of the matter is, you're not always guaranteed to win a lot of money in a GPP. You can go in there and take these shots, and then you finish in 2000th place, and you're winning $8 when you bet 4. That's the same thing as a 50-50, coach. If that's the case, just play a 50-50. Play a heads up. Play a single entry. So knowing these contests and how to structure your lineup going into them is going to be absolutely key if you want to be profitable in DFS. And I cannot stress it enough.
And that's a good spot for me to say two things to those that are a little newer to the game, and maybe just a reminder to those that are just the mild player. But look at, first of all, the rules for each site as far as scoring, because every site is extremely different of the main sites out there. So there's all kinds of different double bonuses, and so you really want to understand the lineup you're building that fits the stats that are going to be there. Because if you're making a lineup on Fantasy Draft where there's a whole different positionality, you got a lot more leniency on where positions you're picking, as opposed to something more stringent maybe on a DraftKings where you have to go in each position. You need to look at, you're not going to want to plug the same lineup into both sites. So you've got to look at each site as far as how the roster's built, how the scoring's done. That's very key. And then that's going to help you ultimately build and make sure you have the correct scoring in there. And then you also want to look at how the tournament that you're in pays off. Now, for me, in the cash games and those 50-50s, it's very simple. What you're doing. But when you're playing in any of the tournaments, even the single entry, which I play a lot of those, look at how they're weighted. There's some tournaments that I just think are ridiculous, where the top person gets $10,000. If you finish seventh, you get $100. I mean, it's like there literally are tournaments out there that just the payoff is so high weighted. It's really, ridiculous. And to finish seventh out of 3,000 people and, just get two times your money or three times your money is a waste of time. So look at how those payoffs are. There are, some sites that are doing a much better job with spreading that a little bit more so that, at least it's not just the top 7% of the pool that's getting paid. And in that group, a little bit more is being spread. So I think you have to be aware of those things. Don't just go in there blind. Target what your spot is, what your pay level is that you want to play, what type of tournaments or cash games you want to get involved in, and find out all those rules. Because again, if you just play your favorite players, or everybody knows this, or if you just listen to the tout that everybody's giving you 7% of all the best point guards of 20 out of the teams in the league. I mean, all of that stuff isn't going to get you anywhere. You've got to come up with your own set of strategies. They're going to lead into how you play, what sites you play on, what money levels you play on, and all of that comes into play to managing your bankroll. Because if you don't, it's just you're haphazardly throwing it out there, and ultimately, you're going to eventually lose. And, you also want to keep an eye on the rakes. We talk about that all the time with that big advantage with fantasy draft, and it is a big advantage. You will have some of the other sites like Yahoo and some different ones that will run lower rake events, and they'll highlight those. And you need to, keep an eye out for those as well, because a rake can cost you a lot, especially if you're only winning a certain percentage of the time.
Absolutely. That's the only reason I just want to, like I said, right when we walked in, I bet 20, I won 180. I think I finished in, there was 40,000 people in the contest. I think I finished 283rd. And I was able to, times my money by 9. So that's only because it was a rake-free. If that was a non-rake-free contest, I probably would have won $60, which, hey, a win's a win, don't get me wrong, but it's a big advantage when you're playing these rake-free games. When you see those pop up, take advantage of them. Jump over on Fantasy Draft as soon as you could. Sign up. Promo code HoopBall. No more dash in there. And listen, if you're a smart, advantageous DFS player, you probably already heard about it. But if you haven't, no worries. We're here to help you. That's why we're doing this. Jump on there, sign up, use our promo code, and enjoy that free week of rake-free, football play right now. And see yourself make a couple profits. I'm by no means, like I said, a DFX expert when it comes to the NFL. But if you sign up using our promo code, shoot me a message, shoot me a little a tweet, and I'd be happy to kind of give you some advice on it. Take it with a grain of salt. It's not the NBA. That's my specialty. But if you sign up with our promo code, I'll try to help you guys profit in whatever sport you're playing. That's our goal here.
Let me ask you this, Mike, just from a guy that doesn't play as many GPPs. Do you utilize any of the Fantasy Cruncher or some of those out there that pre-populate sort of that top 150 lineups for you, or anything like that? Or are you building your own pool of players?
I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy, Coach. I talked about this all last season with Dan over there, and I hand build every single lineup I make. And it may be foolish, but that's also because I know my games. I'm not really maxing out 150 lineups when I play my GPPs. I go for more of the 20 entry max, 40 entry max, those kinds of ones where you're still investing a decent amount of money in each night, but I want to be able to have a part in every single thing. Maybe it's superstition, maybe it's foolishness, but I don't like a computer picking for me. I know my hoops. I want to be able to.
And we're on here, dude, because it's not foolishness. I mean, we're giving that edge different than anything else out there. I believe our show is different than any other DFS show that's out there, and I listen to all of them. So I don't think it's foolish at all. Now, if you are somebody that is mass entering 150 lineups, and that's the way you want to approach it and go after it aggressively, or you have a big bankroll to attack it. I would recommend personally looking into some of those options. The fantasy crunchers, which I've messed with a little bit just to sort of try it out. There's a couple of them really that are really good, and some that really help you. They take a lot into effect of all the stuff that we're talking about strategy-wise. But again, it's the slant of whichever service you're using to develop that. Michael and I, what we're trying to do is give you your own way to go after this so that you don't have to utilize those. But for the mass entries, a lot of them, look, they're worth looking into if you're really going to invest big in those giant GPPs and want to take down one of the biggies.
Absolutely, and the number one thing I'll stress about, if you are using those, and the best thing about them is the easy swappage. If you're building 150 lineups and somebody gets ruled out, 6:55 Eastern time, you're going to panic if you have to go through 150 lineups and manually change them. That's not easy to do. It's a sure way to lose money real fast is, having 150 lineups and trying to manually change those. So I wouldn't recommend it. That's exactly why you want to get one of those lineup crunchers involved. And it also gives you an idea of exactly, it's hard to keep track of how many players you're playing when you do 150 lineups. So, I want to know if I'm playing that many, how much of a percentage I have of a guy, because then I can take a step back, use my knowledge I have and say, like, well, wait a second, something's not right here. I shouldn't have 70% of this one guy. And you've probably heard me say this again, and when you are doing these GPPs and you are mass entering them, you never 100% a player. Don't ever play one guy in every single lineup. Don't do that to yourself, because you'll be shooting yourself in the foot at the end of the night if somebody gets hurt, somebody gets in foul trouble, or if they just playing off, have a bad shooting night. So I never 100% a player. It's my number one rule. I try not to do it when I'm doing my 20 or 40 entry max, because I've lost money like that. I've hit the nuts with every other guy, but then I played, a center who got into foul trouble in the first quarter, and all of a sudden he finishes the game playing 22 minutes.
Yeah. Now I know that feeling. That part isn't that fun for sure. But I'll tell you what, those edges are the kind of edges that make a big difference. I think that one thing to always keep in mind as well is when you're looking at these different sites, some have late swap and some don't. That's another thing to be aware of. So when the lineup locks at 7 Eastern or whatever time that the first game starts, some of the sites, the games that start at 7, they'll all lock, but you're able to strategically change players in later games. So that gives you advantage. Some of them don't have that, which actually, believe it or not, I like, because I think some people, they're rushing home, they haven't prepared, they're jumping in some of these tournaments, and they start a lot of guys in later games so that it gives them time to change their lineups and get things done, where they may be missing out on some of the early players and vice versa. So I like, as someone that's prepared, done my homework, gone through everything, that's another advantage you can take. Fantasy draft is one that doesn't have late swap. So sometimes you get those guys locked in that that or you're expecting to have big games late, and other people aren't willing to take that risk on until they look into it. You can get a big advantage. So one other good thing that the NBA announced this year is that they have to turn in their starting lineups and also let them know guys that are out earlier than they used to, which is a big plus, because there's been times where, some of these teams have been notorious for, last minute decisions, just trying to get a strategic edge on their opponent, but it screws up all of us in the DFS world.
Selfish.
And now,
that's what they are, those coaches.
Those dirty dogs, they don't care about us. But so that's going to help. There's a early, I think it's an hour earlier than it's ever been in the past, where they have to turn those lineups in. So that's going to help, and that's in basketball, that's so massive, because it shifts all the usage numbers. And you'll hear me say usage, if you have a bingo card, that's got to be your center square for listening to one of our shows, because I'll be talking about usage and money equals minutes stuff all the time, because I want, the opportunities for my guys, and that's who I always have a tendency to push towards. But look at that too. That's another big part of what how you can strategically do them. And a lot of them now, it used to be not too many years ago, 3-4 years ago, where you had one card that night with 8 games, and that's what everybody played. Now your options are all over the place. You can play one single game. They'll break the slate into early and late. So you want to strategically look at that too. It can become overwhelming how you strategize, how you want to play and manage your bankroll that games or that day. So, look at that in advance and see what best suits you. Certainly never let something sway you. I love to steer away from like the TNT games, because you can add 10% on ownership across the board, because everybody's going to be watching those games and they want to watch who they're playing. So you get a lot of that, feature games like that. Don't fade them, man. Go for the game that nobody cares about. Sacramento's playing Memphis, and pace is great, and no one's paying attention to that game. That can be mega hit for you. So another small tidbit.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about guys that you want to watch play, Coach, I think that's the perfect segue right there. I think you just nailed it. Who's the number one team that you're looking to, that you have your eye on now, that you're looking to take advantage? And, we spoke about bankroll before, and you'll hear me say manage your bankroll. I'll tell you an easy way to do it is never play more than, 10, 15, 20% of your bankroll in a night, and, have that number in mind, keep that number in mind, don't defer from that number. But on opening night, I got to be honest with you, Coach, I kind of forget about that number. I like to play it. I mean, and it's for good reason. It's a time to take advantage. And, who's the number one team you're looking to take advantage on going into the season?
Well, let's. I would say for me, the Phoenix Suns. I have a couple of reasons for that. Let's first of all start out by giving you a little clip of Monty Williams talking about coming to Phoenix and his excitement about being able to coach Devin Booker.
The guys are talented on this team, and when I watch film, I see in Devin, I see a guy who could be a household name here soon. He reminds me so much of a Brandon Roy, who I coached in Portland. And at the time, Brandon, Dwayne Wade, and Kobe Bryant, when we were in Portland, they were running the league. And I feel like Devin has a chance to be like that or eclipse that. I feel like he has the game that can not only put up points in the regular season, but he has a game that's fit for the playoffs. And anytime you can give the ball to a player and get a bucket, that's a luxury. And I feel like Devin has that ability.
There you go. And you got to love Monty Williams, man. That a class act, and a guy I am so excited that is getting this opportunity in Phoenix. And, that's why that is one of my target teams is, Monty Williams, even though he did assistant coach with the Spurs and, defense is important, he's still at his heart is a speed guy. He also worked with some coaches, Alvin Gentry and different ones that speed up the ball. But he's talked about in the preseason of, giving the reins to Ricky Rubio, pushing it. Devin Booker, I think, is going to just break out, and you can just hear the excitement in that interview with Monty and other interviews. He's, the superstar that's, I think, going to be the next household name, as Coach Williams said. And so I think, I don't believe they're going to be overpriced initially, because Phoenix won 19 games last year. And so obviously there's not a lot, there's not a lot of respect across the industry. But, Rubio, with the way he's played, he's actually arguably been the best player in the FIBA World Championship. And I haven't mentioned Team USA. I'm saving that to the end. So don't make any smart remarks.
Oh yeah, you know those are coming. I know your Twitter's probably been getting blown up.
I'm delaying that till the end. But back to the Suns. So with Rubio pushing the pace and knowing how Monty wants to play, and having Booker knocking down threes, they added Dario Saric, I think, on given nights, as a double machine. Kelly Oubre's coming into his own, and Mikal Bridges. Those are all guys that not to say DeAndre Ayton isn't a good factor early on as well, catching some of those lobs from Rubio. So the Suns are definitely a team I have circled. Now, when we're talking about these teams to target early and fade early, again, we're talking to them in a general, giving you a little feel for something to keep an eye on. But again, it'll be that matchup that night against that team, against if Booker's going against the best defensive shooting guard in the league, I'm going to change my opinion on that. But overall, keep an eye on the Suns early. They're young, they're hungry. I think Rubio's going to come in just buzzing with confidence. They're going to get a medal in the FIBA games, and I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. Who's your first squad?
Well, I mean, I'm on a very similar note to you, but I'm going to take it at a little bit of a different angle, and I just piggyback off your Suns thing, and you're going to kind of see where I'm going with this. And why I like to target teams. It's not just necessarily the players that are on that team, but it's the players that are facing that team. And for instance, the Suns last year, I loved picking centers against them all last season because they ranked dead last in team rebounding per game at 40.4 rebounds, and they allowed the fourth most in the NBA. So I don't think that's going to change too much with Dario Saric being added. Yes, he's a better rebounder than what they had there last year, but he's not necessarily an elite power forward. They're going to play at a fast pace, so I'm going to be looking. I like to target centers on that, but that's kind of the point I wanted to take. And I picked the Hawks right now, and it's because the Hawks they played at an insane pace. They averaged 113 points per game, which is only 12th in the NBA, but their defensive rating. I like to target teams against them because they had a 113.9 defensive rating last season, and it was fourth worst in the NBA. And a lot of that has to do with Mr. Trae Young over there at point guard. Trae Young actually finished dead last out of 514 NBA players in defensive plus minus. He had a negative, if you didn't hear that, 4.78 real plus minus in defensive rating. So,
ouch.
Yeah, it's not very good. And we kind of saw this with Isaiah Thomas over there in Boston. Yes, he can score the rock. Yes, he's a very valuable player, but he's a defensive liability. And factoring and honing in on those kinds of things allows you to take advantage of them. I mean, they allowed 119.4 points per game to opposing teams. They're playing at a fast pace. There's a position of emphasis to attack. And all these factors lead into, just why I like to target teams against the Hawks. And, they allowed a .582 true shooting percentage against opposing teams. That's second highest in the league. They're easy to score against. They're going to play at a fast pace. What positions to attack. All those factors are absolutely key, and for me, that's the number one reason why I'm going to probably look to hone in on the Hawks on opening night.
I don't blame you one bit, and I'll tell you, there's no question. I cannot tell you how many times I started whoever the point guard was that was playing against the Hawks, just for the reasons that you said. I mean, it's they're not only were number one in the pace last year. They were last in defense and everything else that you stated. So I think that's a great one to circle, no doubt about it. All right, for the second team that we're both looking to target, if you will, early, we both came up with the same team. We chatted briefly before we came on the air, and it's the Sacramento Kings. I think that might be sort of the chalk pick of what everybody's talking about right now, but listen in briefly to De'Aaron Fox and what he has to say about the hiring of Coach Luke Walton.
He's been great. He communicates extremely well. That's one thing that he definitely does. Now, I don't know, just yet if I don't think he's not going to yell at people or anything like that. But so I've worked out with him about 4 or 5 times since the summer started before I left Sacramento.
Worked out. He was working out also?
Yeah, he was working me out basically.
Okay,
so, I mean, he's been great. He's already let me know what he wants me to do in the offense, just kind of where my shots are going to come from, and just kind of already getting me ahead of the curve of what to expect next year. And the thing about, everybody asked me about, being drafted by the Lakers and all that, my first year, we were last in pace.
Slow.
So I already know the way that he wants to play. So I feel like if I was able to play in that type of, environment or in that type of pace offense my first year, I think it definitely would have been a lot different.
There you go. And De'Aaron Fox certainly made a name for himself last season. Definitely one of the most improved players in the NBA, and then, in the Team USA camp, got moved up to the top team. A lot of people thought he was the best point guard in the whole camp. So, I know he's excited about what Walton's told him as far as the pace of play. If you listen to that whole interview, Fox talks about, his rookie year at Sacramento, they were dead last in pace. And now he gets to, a couple of years in now, get with a guy in Luke Walton that wants to push the ball, run with these young guys. And, for me, I'll let you talk a little bit more about Sacramento, but the thing that makes me most excited is I just see breakout seasons coming for not just Fox, the guys like Buddy Hield, who I think is one of the best shooters in the league. And I thought he would just be a volume shooter, but man, as he honed in and his percentages have been solid. He very rarely has bad games, and just a good, solid DFS consistent player. Bagley, I've always loved Bagley. I thought he should have started right off the bat ahead of Willie Cauley-Stein, but now that he's gone, I think that, he and Giles, who's another guy that's always a value on the board that you can get in there, very cheaply. And Trevor Ariza, he's still around. He's going to be a main player and get minutes on that team. And he's another guy that, man, there's nights that he just lights it up. I had him, on a night where he was probably 2% owned, and I think he hit 10 threes. He gets on a streak. So I love the Sacramento feeling there. When I saw the NBA Summer League, I took some pictures of I was down close with their group. They happened to be the one team. They had team photos and a mandatory meeting. So they were the only team at the NBA Summer League that had all of their players there. So I got to see them all interact, and just they look to have a lot of camaraderie, a lot of joking around. They look pretty tight. I think they're an up-and-coming team, and I think that, again, a team coming off a bad record, may be some good value early on.
Absolutely. I mean, last season they played at the 5th highest pace, the 4th ranked team when it came to 3-point shooting percentage with 37.8%. The team plays at an extremely fast pace. Coach, we've talked about it. We touched on their youth. It's a big factor, and it's part of the reasons why I like the Hawks so much and I like to target teams going against them. Mistakes happen with youth. Youth plays quick. They like to play just off of straight rhythm. They like to play off talent. And this team has a lot of it. I mean, we touched on De'Aaron Fox, how quick, rim to rim, basket to basket. He is the fastest player in the NBA. I mean, the only one that we can argue against maybe being a little bit faster would be Mr. Ish Smith. But the team averages 93.1 field goal attempts per game. Or field goals attempts per game, yes. So that's second in the NBA. They were 8th in points made per game, 114.2. So this team is going to play fast. And one of my favorite things about the Kings is that we kind of know which players we're targeting, especially from me.
Right.
Bringing back the GPP aspect of it is I look for a lot of ceiling games. So, you touched on Trevor Ariza a little bit before, and it's no secret. Trevor Ariza is one of, if not the best, corner specialist with a 3-point ball in the NBA, and has been for the last several years. So, when he gets hot from the corner, when he's getting those shot attempts, he can knock down 6 or 7 of them in a game. We've seen it happen before, and that just leaves a massive ceiling. De'Aaron Fox, he's a guy that can get his own. He can create at the rim. Not the best shooter just yet, but that's why he's got Buddy Hield next to him. And, you mentioned it. This guy just lit it up. We expected this to kind of happen his rookie year coming out of Oklahoma, but it takes these guys an extra year. It takes a couple, 2 years, 3 years for them to really hit that stride. And looking at this team, there's a lot of guys who are in their second, third, fourth season, and it's just screaming breakout. I'm all over. I mean, the team was 11th in true shooting percentage. I expect that to go up a little bit. They added a few pieces, like you said. Dwayne Dedmon's over there now. He's going to be playing center. And Dwayne Dedmon's one of the best point-per-minute producers in the NBA. I mean, he's one of the few players last season that averaged a block, a steal, and a 3 a game, and he only did it in limited minutes. I'm really looking forward to this team, Coach. And, I'm excited. I think Luke Walton's going to have a great influence on them. I really do. And we talked about it before. He's only coached teams that played at very high paces. Being a member of Golden State over there, taking the reins over in LA for a little while. So he played at a high pace, and that's kind of what he's used to. And when you have a point guard like De'Aaron Fox who can just outrun everybody on the court with the ball, it's hard not to take advantage of it. It's almost foolish. It's something that we've seen Russell Westbrook do in the past. We see Giannis do it now. John Wall, a great. We almost forget about the guy, with these injuries. And I think a lot of it happened to be because, we saw that kind of take a notch down because Fat John Wall came in this year. He looked a little overweight when he first came in, but it's something that I fully anticipate taking advantage of going into the DFS season, and I expect the Kings to take advantage of is that speed that they could play with. A few players I probably would shy away from, Harrison Barnes. I just don't ever see those upside games in him. He's usually overpriced, too. That's the only thing, I feel like he's been overpriced since he was an All-American in high school. This guy was supposed to be the next Kobe Bryant, they said. And North Carolina. Yep, and we just haven't seen it just yet. He signed that massive deal with the Mavs after he left Golden State. It was, highway robbery. Just basically drove a Brinks truck away from Dallas, full of money. He just signed a new one with the Kings for $90 million. I don't know where he's getting the money. Like, where are the teams? I do not know. I mean, I like the guy. It's just I don't see him as a key component. I mean, he was like the sixth guy we mentioned on the team. So what does that tell you? He's literally there's no team that he can go to and be the best player on the team right now in the NBA. There's not one team. So for him to get that kind of contract, it to me it just speaks more of an actual basketball perspective. He's a great basketball player. I mean, he's not a terrible defender. He's not an all-class defender. He's not a terrible shooter. He's not the best shooter. He's just a middle of the road kind of guy. But it's a very valuable thing to have on an NBA team. It's just these small market teams have to overpay for guys like that. Unfortunately, nowadays in the NBA, if these guys are going where the money's going, and a team like Sacramento is going to have to pay for him. Whereas if you were to go to LA, Golden State, Boston, New York, these guys. Don't get me started on Vlade, because Vlade, I love him, but he makes some odd moves. That's all I can say. And but whatever, man. We're talking about his team. So something's got to be going right. Exactly. He's doing something over there. Maybe it's a couple other puppets pulling the string behind the scenes that are kind of giving him a little bit of, do this, do that. I'm sure he's got a couple of advisors over there that are helping him out a little bit. But, they brought in a lot of veteran talent this year. I'm expecting those veterans to kind of rub off on these rookies. I'm expecting guys like Dwayne Dedmon, who's never really playing on a good team other than the Spurs. He's got that pop culture in him. But after, going from pop to the Hawks, you got a thirst to win. You have to. You went from being on one of the best winning percentage teams in the past, 20 years to possibly one of the worst teams that we've ever seen. So I anticipate those veterans to really rub off on these younger guys like De'Aaron Fox, like Buddy Hield, and I'm expecting, Bagley as well. And I'm expecting some big things to happen for the Kings this year. And anybody that knows us over here at Hoopball, we have a lot of strings in on the Kings. We're big Kings. Do. We're a Kings homer for sure, no doubt about it. So we're sticking on brand right now, and I think that's very on point to the hoop ball. But for all these teams that we love, Coach, I think we have a few teams that we're probably avoiding as well. Yeah, I think so. I mean, and we have I think two different teams here, and let's go into those. My first fade, and it's sort of going to be a surprise to everybody, but it's the Utah Jazz, and I'll explain why.
yes, I think they're going to be a terrific team this year. I think they're going to be, big contender in the West to make a lot of noise. But the reason I'm saying to fade them early is, pace of play is always in question there. Mike Conley is coming from Memphis to Utah, similar, slower pace of play. So that's, what he's used to as well. Bogdanovich is a spot-up shooter. I just see two things. One, you've got a little time that it's going to take, I think, for this new unit to gel together with the two major new pieces that they added. And they also added Ed Davis and some other guys. So there's a lot of things that they have to get used to there. So I think they'll be a little slower out of the gate. They also have Rudy Gobert and Joe Ingles coming off being big stars in this big FIBA run that they're both on. So I see them initially. I mean, they were ranked 14th in pace last year, which is better than most people would have guessed because everybody always thinks they're at the very bottom. So they were in the middle of the road, but I just don't think that's going to increase. Quinn Snyder's coaching style is more of a Memphis grindhouse kind of style where, he's going to beat you on his floor and make every bucket tough. So I think their prices will be inflated a little bit early because everybody's, talking about Utah being a major contender in the West. So that's just a slight fade I have early on.
And I'm glad you brought up Ed Davis because there's a reason why they brought him in, and it's because who, Coach, I'm going to ask you. You know who the first player was in the NBA for defensive real plus minus last season? It's probably an easy answer. It's a segue to what I'm trying to say. We'll just get to it. It was Rudy Gobert. Let's be real. The guy's
Rudy Gobert,
the Stifle Tower. You know who number 2 was though?
You're just trying to still slide that Team USA stuff in there just to make me sick one last hour.
Listen, I'm going to keep hearing about how I, faded JaVale McGee last year when he dropped 80-something points or whatever it was. You're going to hear about this Team USA for a long time.
I'll have my editorial clip at the end of the show. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and what I was getting at is the number 2 player in the NBA. We talked about Trae Young being ranked 514th among all active players, dead last. Number 2 is Ed Davis. He was right behind Rudy Gobert in real plus minus. Yes, he played a lot less minutes, but when the guy's on the court, he's a force to be reckoned with on the defensive end. 4.13 defensive real plus minus, right behind Rudy Gobert, 2 spots ahead of Draymond Green. Joel Embiid ranked 5th. It just goes to say that any center that's going against this team is going to struggle. They're going to have to face Gobert for 30-plus minutes, and when he's off the court for 17 or 18 minutes, they're going to see Ed Davis in there. So they're going
to get every rebound, man. They're going to be tough.
They're going to absolutely be a tough team to face. And just looking at the minutes per game last season, Rudy Gobert averaged 31.8. Ed Davis averaged 17.9. You add those two together, we're looking at a little bit over 48, but that's pretty much what you can expect from that team. They're going to run these both. One of these guys is going to be on the court of all time. And I touched on it a little bit with the Hawks. And while you say you're fading the Jazz, the way I look at this is when you talk about pace of play, yes, they play at one of the slower paces in the NBA, and they're a very, very good defensive team. But you could pretty much just count them in. Any team that they're facing is going to have a higher pace of play, and you almost have to average those two together and get a neutral pace of play between both teams. So they're going to be playing at an above-average pace of play just about any team that they're facing if they're going to be playing slow. So I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be fading them as much as you. And it's not a knock on you, Coach, obviously.
It's going to be on the matchup, and that's going to be the key factor. I think it's the matchup. But, again, for the external reasons, and we're generalizing to sort of make our points on what we're looking for, but not. We can disagree a little bit on this one, but
I might take a wait and see with them. I think that's the route I'm going to take. I kind of want to see how this usage is going to be distributed between them. Seeing how Conley and Mitchell kind of gel together, seeing how they use Ingles off the bench is going to be a big factor for me. And just kind of seeing how Bogdanovich is going to insert himself into this offense. He might be a little bit more passive coming over from the Pacers. Like we talked about it last show a little bit. They needed him to score there. They don't really need him to score as much here. They'll be happy if they can get 13 to 12 points a game out of him, and I think they'd run with that if he's just knocking down a couple threes during that.
I don't want any late text swearing about your Utah Jazz guys on your DFS team.
Yeah, you're going to hear about it either way, Coach. You're going to hear my frustrations either way.
That damn Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell's one of the guys, I'll tell you right now. He's tough to get right. He's very high priced.
I'll tell you what, man. He is one of those guys. There's a group of them in the league that just drive you to drink because you play them and they lay an egg. You sit them and they score 40. He's one of those guys that just falls in that category. It's bizarre. But, I'm with you on that.
And my personal, one of my personal attacks I try to do when I'm building and constructing my lineups is, the shooting guard and small forward position are, I would say, lackluster generally. It's very top heavy. You have a few guys that are way at the top. You have a few guys that are down at the low. So personally, I would rather just go to spend down option at those two positions when I'm building my lineups. LeBron James. You're looking at Kevin Durant when he's healthy. Giannis, all these other guys that are very good. But I want to attack the positions and spend up on those positions where I know these guys could break a slate. Small forward, shooting guard. Unless it's one of those top tier guys, it's kind of hard to do that.
It is. And I'll tell you, that's another advantageous piece for fantasy draft. Because it's just front court and back court. You don't have to specify and play those weaker positions. You can play 3 centers or whatever you want to do if you can build around your lineup there.
You just whispered in my ear, Coach. 3 centers.
Isn't that awesome?
Anybody that knows me knows I love to play centers. It's just get those double machines. Get the guys that are grabbing those boards. Going to get some blocks. Even if they get 10 to 15 points, you can't make up for those blocks and rebounds. And again, know your site because, sites like DraftKings offer, double bonuses, triple-double bonuses. Things, FanDuel gives you extra points for blocks and steals compared to some of the other sites. So it's a big factor, like you said earlier in the show, is knowing what platform you're playing on and how their scoring works. And that's going to completely – listen – if it doesn't affect the way you're building your lineups, make it affect the way you're building your lineups. That's why we're here. That's why I'm trying to tell you guys this. It's a huge factor. It makes the biggest difference because I can tell you right now there's been nights where I was 0.75 points away from winning thousands of dollars and I ended up winning $80 or $60 or whatever it may be. So every point matters and you need to really count those in there, even if it seems something minuscule.
Well, it allows me to get my quote in there because that's going to be the number 2 X on the bingo card is success occurs when opportunity meets preparation. So exactly what you're saying. Know your site, know your players, know your scoring, and how that fits into the whole program because that's a big part of it. Man.
I mean, it's like even in a season-long league, it's obvious in this. You're not going to go into a season-long draft not knowing what kind of draft it is, not knowing if it's an 8-cat league or a 9-cat league or whether it's a 2-center league, which, don't do those. I don't recommend them, but knowing what your format is a key factor into how you're going to draft going into there. So I expect the same to be taken in DFS. Take the same approach and use it. So
no doubt. Well, who's your first fade, big fella?
Ooh, first fade. So I'm going to have to go with a surprising team, and maybe it's not going to be surprising if anyone's a nerd like me and has been keeping an eye on stuff like this, but I'm going to be kind of fading the Thunder. They're a team that we talked about, last show, led the league in, points or shot attempts per game. They were, I believe, 6th in pace, so they're up there in pace as well. So a lot of people were used to going to that well, so that's a well I'm going to avoid because we're talking about a completely different team. Paul George is gone. Russell Westbrook is gone. These are 2 players that allowed them to kind of push those pace, that would absorb a lot of those shot attempts. With Chris Paul playing point guard, we'd have to imagine that they're going to slow the pace down a little bit, that they're going to set up plays a little bit differently. I mean, Chris Paul is a guy who likes to dribble the ball up and take about 6 to 8 seconds off a shot clock, where Russell Westbrook would go 0 to 100 from rim to rim, coast to coast. That alone is probably going to lower their pace by at least 6 to 4 to 6 shot attempts per game, and that's what I'm expecting. So I'm not too keen on them. I mean, you might have heard me say there's a player or two on them that I absolutely love. Cough, cough, Steven Adams. I'm absolutely going to be all over this year. I'm expecting a large volume of rebounds for him.
Aquaman.
Yeah, he does look like Aquaman. Even when he runs, he kind of looks like he's swimming a little bit. But of course, and we touched on this earlier. There's going to be guys that we still like on these teams. There's going to be times where we are targeting these guys, but this is overall knowledge. Yes, I do like Steven Adams. Doesn't mean I'm going to go roll him out there every night. Price is going to impact that, and their matchup is going to impact that. But he's one of the players on that team that I am going to be a little bit more generous with my allowance. I don't want to really touch the Thunder otherwise, at least for the time being, until I see I could take advantage of a certain spot. But Steven Adams is the one guy I think that we could take advantage of. I don't expect him to be high priced. There's no reason for him to be. He's never lit the world on fire. But we talked about those defensive rebounds last show, and I expect plenty of them to be available for him come this year with Russell Westbrook gone. But other than that, I'll let everybody else have at it. Go take the Thunder. Go think Chris Paul is going to drop 40 points for the Thunder. If you think that's going to happen, go take him.
I don't know if you saw the story that just broke a couple days ago, but they're already talking about moving Gallinari before the season even starts. So they are so hell-bent on moving salary and loading picks. They already have 10 picks in the next couple of years. I don't know. I just don't trust anything they're doing, and I think it's a big risk, really. And also, I believe Billy Donovan's somewhat of an overrated coach. He never really produced when he had some of those stars there to the point where they won anything. So I'm with you, man. I'm fade central on them till we figure out what's going on.
I always say I think he's the reason why you see college coaches like Krzyzewski, stay in college. I mean, be successful with what you're good at. I mean, he came to the NBA and had an all-star team lined up for him.
Yeah,
and hasn't done anything. I mean, in Florida, it was a different story. It's a totally different element. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I mean, I could.
Average.
Well, and even that might be a little bit generous. He's an average coach. But, it's not the same game. It's not the same mindset. You're not playing with kids anymore. You're playing with grown adults who have egos. You're playing with, guys who – there's not a bad player on the court in the NBA. I could say everything I want about Trae Young and how bad he is defensively, but this is the highest level of the game. These guys are smart. Coaches are smart. He walked into an element that he was not used to. He's going to be on the hot. It's going to be, in lack of a better words, it's going to be a dumpster fire over there in OKC, and I would be extremely surprised if Chris Paul, Danilo Gallinari are on that team by the trade deadline, and even Steven Adams. I don't want to say it, but if they can get something for a guy, they're going to do it. They're basically the Philadelphia Thunder at this point, 4 years ago. So they're just stockpiling these picks. They're going to use these picks. They're going to try to rebuild. They're going to try to get their next Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and James Harden, just like they did a few years ago. And being that ain't going to happen. You're never going to assemble stars like that again. That was unheard of. When you could just think about that back then, Coach. Those three guys playing on the same team at one time. If you were to say that now, that's absurd.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I saw a stat about how many MVPs now the Thunder have traded away. Like 6 of the last 9 MVPs or some crazy stat like that. But they're in rebuild mode, and I think their fans know it. I think they'll build around Shea and some of the younger guys, and then just all these draft picks. But I guess you can't really complain if you're Thunder fans. They've had a hell of a run, and sometimes in the small markets, you just got to face the facts that you got to reset and retool, and then hope to come out with some of that strong talent again, just the way it works.
Absolutely. And for you best ball guys out there, I know this is a little off topic, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a great best ball draft right now. I mean, if everything goes to fruition like I expect and Chris Paul does get traded, you're talking about a guy that's going to be taken late. He's going to have a good usage. He's going to get minutes. He's going to play regardless when Chris Paul is there. But once Chris Paul's gone, it is his team. So he's one guy I like to target, the middle to late rounds of best ball. So I just thought I'd throw that in there for those guys who, like I said, I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong here, Coach, but anybody that's listening to us at this point of the year, a month and a half out from the actual NBA season, is probably a degenerate like us.
No, they just want to prepare and win money and take basketball by storm, man. That's it. I believe they're putting in the time, like you put the time in the gym to, get your game better. You put your time in getting prepared. All right, let's get on to my second fade because I want to go through this one fast because it pains me brutally to say who my second fade team is.
I'm dying. So Coach didn't even tell me this, guys. I'm excited to hear who it is because he's been building it.
I'm an MFFL, Mavs fan for life. And I love the Mavs, but believe it or not, they're my early fade. And let me explain why. Being a Dallas guy and following a team pretty closely, I'm excited for the future with KP and everything that's going on. Here's my point. Carlisle is a very controlled pace guy. Dallas was 19th, and that's the highest pace they've been in the last couple of years. So the pace isn't going to be there. There is going to take an adjustment time for how they're going to play, whether they're playing KP at the 5 or the 4, and how Powell's going to fit into that. They still haven't decided on if Justin Jackson, Tim Hardaway are starting. There's a lot of questions and mix of things that have to go on. It looks like from all reports that DeLon Wright's going to start at point, but he loved Jalen Brunson. So in other words, I'm mentioning all these guys. JJ Barea is back. They signed Seth Curry for a bunch of money. I mean, how many guys is that already? 10? And I didn't say Maxi Kleber or Boban. So my thing is, it's just right now, and I believe until Carlisle gets all of this working, I think they can be a competitive team in the West, but Luka's going to be ridiculously priced. He'll be one of the most expensive guys on the board. KP will probably be overpriced initially because, knowing Carlisle, he's not going to roll him out there for 35 minutes a game right off the bat after not playing for almost 2 years. So, even though I'm excited that the Mavs are retooling, I can't say, again, being a cash play, single lineup guy, that I feel real comfortable investing in any of these Mavs early on in the year until hopefully they get some type of rotation set, which might not happen. They may play 10 deep all year, and they may be a consistent fade team. But so that's it. I'm embarrassed to say it, but there it is.
All right, and now everybody knows that we're both kind of homers for the Mavs. I also, you actually live in Texas, so maybe you have a better reason than me. I live over here in Connecticut, but I've been a diehard Mavs fan since I was about, a child. And,
well, dude, let me tell you this. I went to the very first ever Dallas Mavericks game at Reunion Arena with my dad when I was in 8th grade. So there you go.
All right, so you got me beat a little bit, I guess I'll give you that one. But watching Dirk, and maybe I could play a little devil's advocate. I mean, talk about the pace of play earlier being 19th last season, and that being one of their, I guess you could say better pace of plays in the past few years as far as DFS. Could we argue that maybe having old man Dirk on the team had something to do with it? The fact that they were a poor team, they weren't really trying to necessarily win, could have something to do with it. But I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to whether it's fading them in certain contests, because
hold on 1 second, I have to wipe a few tears just hearing Dirk's name. Okay, I compose myself.
Moment of silence real fast.
Yes.
No, listen, he's living life on Twitter right now, having fun with fans still. What was it, a few weeks ago when he tweeted that he had a warm reception when he got off the plane, but it turns out everyone was there for Ezekiel Elliott.
He's my favorite human being on earth.
I love
That's
him.
all
Man.
I'm saying.
And I'll tell you what, he's the reason I started loving ball. It's that just watching him, that stroke
Just the crazy balance, off balance, one leg, just
best foreign player of all time, in my opinion. And I think
Oh,
it's
no
hard. You
doubt.
can't even argue that. And
Not even close.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that we can put in the same sphere as
No.
him. Remember when they tried to say Andre Bargnani was going to be the next version of him? Good times. No, but I'm with you on a lot of the Mavs stuff. I mean, I play a little bit more of the GPP angle, so we touched on that a little bit earlier, and guys like Kristaps and Luka are definitely GPP viable. But even DeLon Wright, he's another guy. But we need to, again, another team maybe. Fade for the first few nights, take the wait and see approach. Let's see how these minutes are going to get distributed, especially amongst the guards. Like you said, you mentioned a lot of guards over there. DeLon Wright, Luka, Brunson, Hardaway, Curry. I want to see how those minutes are going to get distributed amongst the guards. I feel a little bit safer with the front court. I think Powell, after they signed him to an extension, that he's pretty much secure for 26, 25 minutes. Kristaps, we want to see how he's going to recover from that injury. How many minutes are they going to play him right off the rip? Are they going to ease him back in? Those are things that we don't know, and those are the reasons why we should fade him, at least for the time being. So
I'm with you, bro. All right, so who's your second pick?
So I'm going to take another little surprising angle, and I'm going to go with the Pelicans. Because if we look at last year, they played at one of the fastest paces. They had one of the worst defenses. They would score a lot. So these are all reasons why we love guys on that team for DFS. But are we talking about the same team that they played with last year, Coach? Or are we talking about 4 new guys in the starting lineup?
I have never seen Alvin Gentry play slow, though. That's the only thing I would counterpoint you on with that is every time I'm putting my team together, I always have that thing in the back of my mind where he can roll guys out there and they're going to just run and gun. But I get it. They have so many players. They got so much to figure out. It makes sense that it's going to take some time.
And that's it. And I don't know where this usage is going to go. I mean, last season we kind of have an idea with who's going to – I mean, we saw Kenrich Williams getting tons of usage over there at some point during the season. We saw Christian Wood just pop in here and there and drop a quick 40 burger in DFS out of nowhere. So,
hooray! My biggest win of the year.
I'll believe me. I was always on Christian Wood. He's a guy that's a great point per minute producer. But now they got all these guys over from the Lakers. They drafted Zion. They go out and they signed Derek Favors. They kept Jahlil Okafor. There's a lot of mouths to feed, and I just don't know how this is going to exactly play out just yet. Yeah. And speaking on Zion, he's the guy I'm probably going to fade right off the rip. I mean,
Zion and Drew Holiday are going to be way overpriced. I just can see it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not even necessarily about their price because I'll pay a premium price tag for a guy if I'm confident he's going to go out there at a decent to low ownership and put up buckets, but. Come on, it's Zion Williamson. He's the most hyped rookie since LeBron James. You're going to tell me that you don't expect to be like 30% owned in GPPs on opening night or something like that? Everyone's going to want to play this guy.
TNT opening game, fade city for me.
Oh, I'm dodging him. It's gonna be like a telemarketer calling me during dinner time. I'm gonna do fade it. I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna cuss him out, whatever it may be. I'm not touching him. Not until I see that price tag come down, or when I could take advantage of him in an advantageous spot, like maybe against like a team like the Suns, who we just talked about as a poor rebounding team. But how many minutes is he going to get at power forward? I mean, are they going to play Derek Favors and Jahlil Okafor next to each other here and there? Are they going to play Favors at the 5 with him? He's going to be fighting for rebounds. He's going to be fighting for usage. He's got other guys there that could score the ball. Ingram. Is a guy that I was never really too high on, but I'm not going to say he's a bad player. I actually I lump him in a little bit with that Harrison Barnes kind of category. We're going to have Lonzo Ball hanging onto the ball a lot. He needs the ball in his hands to be effective. And then Drew Holiday, again, unbelievable season last year, but he did it with nobody else there. So there's going to be a few reasons why I don't like to play this team. And again, doesn't mean I'm fading the team that's going to be playing them. Maybe the shooting guard, because Drew Holiday is one of the best defensive shooting guards in the league. So, maybe that's a position of emphasis I want to avoid. But them as a whole, players on that team, I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach. If there is one player that I would target, maybe on opening night, let's just say, It might be Lonzo, just because he doesn't need to score the rock to be effective. We know he's going to be playing a ton of minutes. He's going to be pushing the pace. He's going to be getting steals. He's going to be getting little blocks at guard, plenty of assists, all the little counting stats that can get us there where he doesn't need to score. But anybody that relies on scoring on that team, I'm probably going to avoid.
I think it's a good move, and I have to agree with you on that one there, Mr. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, they played at, I think they had the third pace last season. They played at the third ranked pace. That, like you said, Alvin Gentry had a lot to do with that. That necessarily wasn't the team. I expect that to continue.
Second. They were second.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do get up and down, but it's like you say. The thing that I always steer from is teams that are going to start off with a big, like 10-man, 11-man rotation and haven't really determined the real strong usage. I want to hunker down with my one lineup or two lineups and have guys that I know are going to get those minutes in the clutch. They're going to play, and it just, to me, that takes a big edge. I mean, just the opportunity is such a key. So, all right. I want to remind everybody too, if you enjoyed tonight's show, we hope you did, and you'll join us again. You can listen to Hoopball DFS Today podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. Please subscribe, rate, review, thumbs up, 5 stars, give us some good comments. We want to, continue to keep our sponsors happy, keep our Hoopball folks happy, so that we can continue to bring you this content. These grinded out days of before preseason starts, when we're getting ready, is going to pay off. We know it's going to make you some big bucks, and it's going to be worth your time. And then when we start breaking games down, is when it's really going to get fun. So looking forward to that aspect of things. Sure.
And absolutely. And let's just say, listen, it's free content, guys. It's free for a reason. We're bringing it to you guys because we have these sponsors. So, if you could give us a nice rate and review, we'd appreciate it. And hey, if you want to give us a little 5-star, and then at the end of it, throw in something that you'd like to see different, we're cool with that. We're cool with that. Just give us a nice little 5-star. And then we'll do we'll do whatever you want us to do. No, I'm just kidding. But for real, Fantasy Draft's working hard over there on their part. We want to make them proud. We want to make the guys over here at Hoopball proud. So if you think you can make us a little bit better, let us know what you want to hear. It's that simple. We're happy to accommodate.
Hit us up with questions too. We're going to start weaving those in. I know we haven't really. I mean, we've used the information in these questions to add to the content of the show, but we'll start actually going over some of these questions that we get. So, hit me up on Twitter at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi, or go ahead.
At Mike Apotria, MikeApotria.
Or you can catch us on the hoop-ball.com forums. Hit us up with a bunch of questions there. Okay, I can't avoid it any longer. The show's about over. I've got to mention, I was up this morning at 5 a.m., excited for Team USA quarterfinals. I was terrified of the game, and my worst nightmare came true. We lost to France, and I just wanted to make a quick commentary because sort of lit up Twitter a little bit today on it. And, FIBA changed the rules where the tournament's now the year before the Olympics. What that's done is it's taken all of our key players out of it because they're not going to play a full season all summer with FIBA, a full season all summer with the Olympics, and then back. It's just not reasonable. So did FIBA do that to maybe, get a lesser USA team in there? Maybe. Possible. Is that an excuse? No. I watched every exhibition game and every game that the USA played in this tournament, and I was very disappointed. And I'm just, I'm going to call this out like I'll call out, if I have a bad pick or bad night or anything else. But I didn't see a sense of urgency from Team USA. They didn't, you put the red, white, and blue on, I don't care what format it's in. It's our basketball's our game. And I just did not feel that Coach Pop coached to the level that I thought he would. I thought his small ball strategy was a disaster. It allowed Gobert to drop 21 and 16 with 4 blocks and dominate the game. Nobody stepped up. Kemba, 2 for 9, 0 for 4 from 3, bunch of turnovers. It was really disappointing. But here's my commentary on it. I'm not trying to kick a dog when he's down. I'm the biggest Team USA fan that's out there. It's just it's time that I think that we need to relook at how we're going to do this. I believe next year the LeBrons of the world, they'll come out for the Olympics. We'll get in there and kick butt and get our gold back. I really believe that. But I think from now on with FIBA, we have to approach this differently because it was just a disaster from the beginning. We had 46 guys or so come into this camp. Nobody knew if they wanted to play or not play. We had non-committals, guys dropping out at the last minute. It was just poorly organized, and there was not commitments ahead of time. They need to just utilize FIBA with the younger group, like that select team that was in there to scrimmage. This would be a good feeder thing for the De'Aaron Foxes and Bagleys and Lonzo. And those guys, the 23 and unders, let them play FIBA, let them develop, and then let the big boys that have been around a while play the Olympics. So I'm hoping that's the way Team USA goes with this. Really disappointed how we represented in FIBA. The games are still great. I've enjoyed it tremendously. If you are an NBA fan, and we have a lot of listeners across the world, I've had multiple people from Serbia also is just as disappointed as we are with their upset. But the semifinals are going to be fantastic. They're the day after tomorrow. It's Australia versus Spain, which both teams have been terrific. Australia, we know, beat us in the scrimmage with Delhi and Patty Mills and Jiggles and all that group. Spain with Rubio and some of those talented people that have been on that team for quite some time. And then the other quarterfinal is both upset teams, Argentina, who has a real good, fiery, experienced team, and France, obviously, with Gobert and Fournier and those guys that stepped up and beat us. So enjoy the semis if you have a chance to see them. Hopefully Team USA learns something from this and regroups. I know Colangelo, Coach K, Coach Pop, all the main people behind it want to do the right thing. So hopefully this doesn't happen again. And, it's a punch in the gut, but you get back up and you get ready and you take it on the next time.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already, go at Coach, tweet at him about this, please.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting enough love in his mentions about this. Personally, I kind of just felt like it was, the other countries are just, they're getting good players. We haven't seen this kind of elite talent on these other teams in the past. I mean, we just talked about it a couple seconds ago, Dirk being the best international player of all time. Now we got guys, like you just said, 2 centers alone, Jokic and, Gobert, are just insane matchups in the NBA with the best players in the world, let alone going against, Miles Turner. I'm not trying to knock here. It's a tough matchup for the guy against guys like that.
He didn't get in tonight. That's the part that was insane today. They played him for like 10 minutes, and he was doing a decent job. We went small ball, and, I could go on and on about this, but, there were multiple rotations in that second half where who was guarding Gobert? Joe Harris, Marcus Smart, Harrison Barnes. Come on. It just didn't make sense, but okay. I'm not going to go there because I know that this was a building experience and we're going to learn from it, brother.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's all I got. Do you have any
closing thoughts on good stuff, our good show tonight, and getting everybody ready to make a bunch of money?
I could just say, listen, write down the notes that we're saying now. We're saying it in a month and a half in advance. I would tell people, take notes, get a little binder, a little notebook, write this down, keep it in your mind. It's not something that you need to directly build off of game day one of the opening season, but these are things that, guys like me and Coach are taking into account. And, we've been playing DFS for a while. We've both been profitable for a while. So we're just trying to expand that knowledge to you guys. So, take what you need from it. You don't need to take all of it. Have your own opinion, formulate your own opinion, use your own research. Nothing can supplant doing your own research. Listen, you're never going to waste time doing research. Even if you spend 3 hours there just looking on Basketball Reference, looking at stats, NBA.com, whatever it may be, it's only going to help you. Formulate your own opinion. It's the biggest thing, the biggest advice I can have.
That's right. Be different, create that opportunity for yourself, and we're going to help you along the way, and we're hopefully all going to make some good money together. But awesome, man, it is time for us to sign off. We'll be on again next Thursday and go into another level deeper and start looking at some positions and some other strategies that you can use going forward. But we appreciate everybody tuning in, and for Hoopball and Fantasy Draft, and for Hoopball DFS Today podcast, and my partner Mike Apotria, this is Joe Sarvati, Coach, signing off, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Take care, guys.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.